this phrase that people use a lot of practice makes perfect is actually false. It's actually one of the most dangerous phrases out there, because the reality is practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome to this week's edition of Life of a CISO with yours truly. Dr. E is in the house. Hope everyone is doing awesome. I hope you are rocking. We're getting mid-year. It always gets exciting when we get to mid-year because hopefully you are crushing it and knocking it out of the park. But if not, there's always time to reset and get things back in gear. One of the questions I've been getting a lot of lately by the coaching clients, and I've been doing a lot of webinars, and people have been asking the question, what are the qualities of a world-class CISO? What are the things that if I want to get promoted, I need to do a better job with? So I'm going to give you a couple tips and tricks of how to figure that out and also give you my opinion on those areas. First and foremost, we have to remember that this phrase that people use a lot of practice makes perfect is actually false. It's actually one of the most dangerous phrases out there, because the reality is practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent. But the question is what you're doing the right thing to be practicing? Right? I see people all the time in the gym that are lifting weights doing it wrong, right? And they end up either not getting results or getting hurt or getting injured. And you could argue, yes, they are practicing it every single day, but they're not getting perfected at it, right? They're actually going worse and getting injured or causing more problems. So it's always important to step back and understand what are those habits or patterns of things that you do over and over and over again, and then question them and say, are they really working? Are they really focusing in on what they should be? And a great example is, and I run across this a lot with my new clients, is one of the first things that always comes up is a lot of people hire me or their company hires me to coach their CISO because they have an upcoming board presentation. So in a couple of months, there's a board presentation and either the CISO needs help or the executives believe that the CISO needs help. So they call me in to say, hey, can you give them some tips and tricks and get them rocking and rolling? In most cases, especially when it's the company that hires me to help the CISO, one of the first things I almost always get is, Eric, I appreciate you taking some time and I respect you. And I know the executives brought you in, but to be honest, I got this. Right? I've been doing this for years. I've done over 15 board presentations and I have this down pat. I know exactly what I'm doing. And I start laughing and I'm like, are you open to improving? And they sort of look at me. And I said, if you honestly believe that what you're doing is perfect and you are crushing it and you are the best presenter to the board on the planet, and that's your belief, then I really can't help you. I'm going to call up your CEO and refund the money. Because if you're not open to listening and you're not opening to improving, then you're going to basically question everything I do. And I've been there. And I've been with folks that don't want my advice. They think they're doing it perfect. And basically everything I say, oh, Eric, that's not wrong. Sorry, Eric, that's wrong. Or Eric, you don't understand our board, or you don't understand our company, or you don't understand this. And I smile going, maybe you don't understand, right? And I understand more. So the first thing in terms of a quality of a world-class CISO, you have to be teachable. You have to be open to recognizing that you're not doing everything perfect. And you need to recognize the feedback loop. Let me help you out here. If the CEO of your company calls me up and says, we have an upcoming board presentation in 2 months and I need you to work with my CISO, can you read between the lines? You are not crushing it. You are not doing a great job, and you are far from perfect, because the CEO wouldn't have called me up if they weren't concerned. If they didn't walk out of the last presentation you did going, what was that? Right? That didn't work. We wouldn't be having this conversation, right? So I always try to do it subtle, but I always want you to recognize that just because you've done 15 board presentations and just because you think you've crushed it and you think you're doing a great job, the reality is you're probably not. And this is the reason I say it says this is the area where most companies call me in for the most help. And in a lot of cases, they actually hire me to do the board presentation because the current CISO isn't doing a great job. So qualities of a world-class CISO, the first one, you must be able to give a business level presentation to the board. Now let me break that down further. You need to be able to talk about cybersecurity as a business problem, not a technical problem. And you need to be able to do it within 15 minutes. So a couple of big no-nos. First, if your slide deck is more than 5 slides, you're in trouble. Almost all of the folks that I work with that go, oh, Eric, I am so crushing it. They go in front of the board with 47 slides that are super detailed, super technical, and not even close to what anyone on the board cares about. If you have a 47 slide deck that is technical with lots of details about false positives, false negatives, attack vectors, tuning, modifications, and all that, that is a brilliant technical presentation if you were giving it to technical people. But one of the things that world-class CISOs do and average CISOs don't is a world-class CISO understands and becomes obsessed with who their audience is. They know and understand their audience, how they think, and how they operate. Average CISOs don't. Average CISOs assume the audience is just like them, and because they love tech and they enjoy a detailed technical presentation of 47 slides, they assume their execs are the same way, and that is not the case. So you need to go and sit in a board a couple times, if you can, as a CISO, and understand how the board thinks, how the board operates, and make sure when you present to the board, you're presenting in their language. And I'll give you the answer. The way you present to a board is you have an intro slide that talks about the current threats to your business. Not general threats, not even general threats to your industry, but you make it very specific. What are the top threats to your organization specifically? What are things as an executive at a business level do they need to understand could impact the business, the revenue, and the profitability in a negative way? That's the first slide. The second slide is what is the critical information or critical data to your organization. So essentially what we're doing is we're setting up our risk matrix. We're setting up the risk profile of the threats and then the critical data. And then our next slide is what are the top 3 to 5 risks to the organization that need more attention or more resources. And it's a simple 4-column chart. what could happen, what is the likelihood of it happening, what is the cost if it happens, and what is the cost to fix it. And then you have a summary slide that basically says, this is the ask. We're asking for this support or this amount of money to fix these X items, and then here's the brief roadmap. Those are your 4 to 5 slides. That's how you crush an executive presentation. So that's the first key thing you want to make sure you're paying attention to is, are you able to communicate and present to the board in a clear, concise manner in 15 to 20 minutes? And I just gave you the template for doing that. So that's the first big quality. The second quality, and let's just sort of take what I covered up at a higher level, is world-class CISOs are world-class communicators. They can communicate to people very, very effectively. Now remember, communication is two-way. Are you listening and then responding to what that person wants? Are you actually providing value to the individual that you're talking with? When they walk away from the meeting or the presentation that you gave, are they better informed, and are they going, wow, I'm in a better position because I had that conversation? Or are they saying that was a waste of 10 or 15 minutes because I have no idea what they were talking about? We still see a lot of issues where world-class CISOs or CISOs still want to be security engineers, where a CISO wants to be a world-class security engineer. If you have any bit of world-class security engineer still in you, any desire to still be a world-class security engineer, you will never be a world-class CISO, because they're two completely different jobs, functions, and skill sets. World-class security engineers are technical, focused on identifying problems at a tactical level, and a CISO is all about a business executive focused on building a strategic solution to increase revenue and profitability. And that leads us right in to the next quality of a world-class CISO. World-class CISOs focus on the outer letters of their job. The outer letters of their job is CO, Chief Officer. The middle letters are really not as important. A chief officer, regardless of what letters you put in between, is focused on the revenue and profitability of the organization. That is their focus, and that is their obsession. World-class CISOs, you would almost confuse as a business executive, because guess what? They are supposed to be, right? C blank O. Whether it's CEO, COO, CIO, CISO. C blank O are business executives. If you are not a business executive, if you are not sitting with the other executives and involved in all the business meetings and are not obsessed with revenue and profitability, then you are not going to be a world-class CISO. A lot of organizations need someone with the title, but they don't view them as a business executive. A good indicator is you're the CISO, but you sit down in IT with the technical folks. You don't even sit in the same building or the same floor as the other executives. You don't socialize or interact with them on a regular basis. And you're not invited to all the daily and weekly meetings that chief officers have, both formally and informally, to run and grow the business. If you are truly a world-class CISO, then you need to be a world-class business executive. So then people say, okay, Eric, how do I do that? How do I get to that point? So do this exercise. It's a fun little exercise for you to do. I want you to create a CV of a world-class CISO. So imagine you're in the laboratory, and you're designing the perfect, most ideal CISO the world has ever seen. And you're going to go in and you're going to write out that CV. What are the qualities that they have? What is the job experience that they have? Where have they worked? What have they done? What have they accomplished? What does their daily, weekly, and monthly schedule look like? And then once you do that, there's actually a few cool things you can do with it. First, take that CV and go through and start highlighting what skills you currently have and what you don't. So if we are now going to translate this amazing world-class CISO CV to you, what are the things that we can keep and what are the things that we have to remove? So you go through and you start highlighting in yellow all the things that you currently have, all the skills or experience or things that you currently have. This is a good exercise because now you level set where you're currently at. One of the big mistakes that people do in career development or personal development is they're so focused on what they want and where they want to go that they never level set and say, where am I currently at? Because if you don't know where you're starting from, how can we put together an effective plan for growth? If you ask me, hey, Eric, can you give me directions on how to drive to Washington, D.C.? It depends on where you're starting. If you're starting in Miami, I'm going to say drive north. But if you're starting in Boston, I'm going to say drive south. And if you're starting in Chicago, I'm going to say drive east. So it's absolutely critical that we know where you're starting. Otherwise, we don't know how to give you appropriate directions. So it's the same thing with becoming a world-class CISO, is you need to know what qualities you currently have and what qualities you don't. And it doesn't matter whether you have one, whether you have 30, how much of the experience you have is not relevant. What's relevant is that you know where you're starting at. This is what you currently have. Then you look at what is not yellow and you start prioritizing. Out of all the items that I currently don't have, which one is the highest priority? And I'll tell you, this is one of the hardest tasks because you're going to want to go and say, they're all. No, so easy. Put them on a list and just start comparing. 1 and 2, which is the highest priority? 2, great, that's now 1. 1 and 3, which is the highest priority? 1, great. 1 and 4, and you basically just go through that list and start prioritizing. Then whatever that top item is, that becomes your new obsession. That's what you're going to spend the next 45 days becoming a master at. And the reason I pick 45, for most people, that's usually how long it takes to build a habit. So I'm not saying that if the top priority is to become a business executive or to communicate in business, that you're going to learn everything you can about business in 45 days. But what I'm saying is you'll build a habit. So maybe the way you get better at being a business executive and speaking that language is you get an MBA. Now that could take 2 years, but if you sign up for the courses, you start taking the courses and you enroll in the program and you do that for 45 days, pretty solid chance you're going to finish. All right, so I'm not saying you finish it in 45 days. I'm saying you build the habit. It might be you decide to read for 40 minutes a night a business book. So you learn and understand the business language. You might decide to hire a coach, get a mentor. Whatever that is, that's what you're going to be focusing on for the next 45 days. And then after 45 days, you have that habit built. You're then going to go in and say, okay, what is the next item? What is the next highest priority? So world-class CISOs are always improving and growing. They always have a personal development plan. And once again, if you work with me as a coach or you're brought in and we're working together, one of the first things I'm going to say is, can you show me your current self-assessment and your current development plan? And don't worry, very few have it, right? And that's one of the other issues. World-class CISOs, one of the top qualities is they recognize that they have to constantly improve. They recognize that they need to become obsessed with their strengths and weaknesses, and then go in and improve them over time. So that's one way to use it. The other way is, if you want to be like somebody else, one way of doing it is to mimic what they do. Now, that's not the perfect solution, but it does get you there quicker. So another option is study and look at world-class CISOs, listen to my episodes because I lay this all out, and say, okay, what does a day, a week, a month in the life of a world-class CISO look like? And just daily, you spend a few hours checking in on things, putting out fires, making sure that everything's working correctly. You spend a little bit of time checking in with your technical team, making sure they're on track. You do daily check-ins with your security team or IT team, whoever reports to you. You then have periodic meetings with the other vice presidents and directors to be able to understand what challenges or issues they have. And then at least once a week, if not more often, you want to check in with each of the other chiefs. So CEO, CFO, CEO. So that's basically a day. You're going to check in and assess where things are. You're going to look at your strategic plan, do some strategic planning, work with your team, check with some of the VPs, and then have a sync up with one of the Cs. And that's basically what your day looks like. So now what you can do is you can compare that to your current day and say, okay, what changes or adjustments do I need to make in order to show up and behave and act like that world-class CISO? Or just follow it. Just say, okay, I'm gonna clear my schedule and this is gonna be the new approach. I'll tell you, world-class CISOs have their days, weeks, and months scheduled. That's another little trick I do when I start working with somebody. I'm saying, can you pull up your calendar? And I just wanna show me what this week, what this month, and what next month looks like. And if you only have a few things scheduled, then I get very concerned, because here's why. You're letting other factors control your day. Because if you're going into tomorrow or Friday and your day is not fully planned by you, prioritized, focusing on the highest priority items, what's going to happen? Anything that comes along is going to occupy your day. Any fires or any issues or any little problems are going to become your problems, because guess what? You don't have anything else planned. So if tomorrow from 2 to 4 there's blank, what exactly are you going to do during that time? And what ends up happening is, even though you say, oh, Eric, you don't understand. I have projects, I have things, then why isn't it scheduled? If you're telling me from 2 to 4 you're going to work on the strategic plan, why isn't it scheduled? Because guess what? If it's not scheduled, anybody that's trying to book a meeting is going to think you're free, and that time is going to get sucked up very, very quickly. So this is one of the hard parts of going from a security engineer to a world-class CISO, because security engineers typically are available to deal with whatever problems are out there. So they're not typically scheduled out every hour of every day. But world-class CISOs, anyone who's a chief officer that's strategically focused on the business, they need to control their time. They need to plan out their week. Every Saturday or Sunday morning, you should be looking at your calendar, looking at your yearly goals, your quarterly goals, your monthly goals, and figure out what your weekly goals need to be. And then plan and schedule that out so when you're starting the week, your calendar is fully scheduled. You know exactly what you're doing. But Eric, what if things come up? It could change, right? You could decide that a higher priority item just arrived and you're going to have to modify or change it. That happens to me where a client will call me on a Tuesday and be like, Eric, we need you on site this week. So then I'll work with my E and say, okay, I know I'm fully booked, but out of Thursday, Friday, which one of these has the most flexibility? Well, first, to be fair, I step back and say, is that client a priority? Right? And if they are, which assuming they were, then I go into my calendar saying, okay, what can be moved? What can be changed? What now that this new high priority item has arrived, what now becomes lower priorities? And it's that constant reprioritization of scheduling out and planning and making sure you're focused on the highest priority items that takes you from an average to a world-class CISO. So try some of those exercises, put together that CV, identify where you're currently at, and then start scheduling out your time, focusing on those highest priority items. And remember, world-class chief information security officers are world-class chief officers that are focused on the growth of the revenue and the growth of the profitability. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Life of a CISO, and I look forward to seeing you next week.